Hey, it is Andy from FENSEPOST, and I have a new setting today. Right here in front of my U-Turn Audio Orbit turntable, I couldn't resist sitting here to do my video because my wife came back with this cool little print and I love it. A few months back, I shared my top 20 albums turning 20 in 2023, which is kind of a mouthful. I loved compiling that list, and I figured it'd be fun to pull together another one. That one being for the top albums turning 10 this year. In this video, I am scouring my collection for albums released 10 years ago, and I'm pulling out the top 10 turning 10 in 2023. Or, in other words, the top 10 albums of 2013. As always, these records are ones I physically have in my collection. Because of that, there may be some quite glaring omissions. Also, these countdowns are most certainly just my personal opinion. So, as you watch this video, let me know down in the comments if you agree, if you disagree, what albums would you put on the list that I am not talking about? I'd love to know. First, let's take a look back at 2013. 2013 was really the tail end of my original tenure of cranking out daily blog posts on the original iteration of my music blog, FENSEPOST. I hit burnout mode hard, and the drop-off in consistent content creation was pretty much instantaneous. However, my passion for discovering new music and picking up some awesome albums on vinyl never really subsided. If anything, the vinyl aspect just grew much, much stronger. As such, it was about this time that I kind of started to stray a bit from the new music for something that was really just new to me. I started digging deeper into an exploration of genres and subgenres that influenced my music taste at the time. Garage rock, psychedelic rock, new wave, punk, post-punk. You get the picture. I wanted to get into the origins of these genres and figure out who the artists were that really sparked those movements. Still, I probably have 25 to 30 albums on vinyl alone that were originally released in 2013. These top 10 are from that list. So number 10, as you can probably imagine, is right here. Monomania by Deerhunter. And Monomania is really when Deerhunter truly caught my attention. Despite being a fan since about 2007 or 2008, Cryptograms, for example, I've had that since that original release. Here, Bradford Cox gives us an expert composition of weirdo, experimental, noisy art rock. I love how this record flows, and it features a number of my favorite tracks by the band. From the cool and lagging swagger of opener Neon Junkyard to the catchy midpoints Blue Agent and THM, really all the way through the end of the album. There are more accessible rockers like The Missing and Back to the Middle, cleverly and gently dropped within, backed by kind of the signature angry bedroom experimentation on songs like the title track, Monomania. Overall, a great album and probably my favorite from Deerhunter. Originally recorded in 2012, as it calls out on the cover, Psychic Ill's fourth album and second on Sacred Bones is probably my favorite from the band, though their 2016 LP Inner Journey Out is kind of a very close second. Blending psychedelic rock and experimental rock with kind of this hazy, high desert drone isn't necessarily something you'd expect out of New York City, but here it is. Then again, two foundational members, Trey Warren and Elizabeth Hart, met at the University of Texas in Austin. What you typically get with Psychic Ills is a mellow, stonery style of indie rock. Favorites from this album include One More Time and FBI, both of those opening the A and B side respectively. Overall, the album is really great, and it's perfect for this time of year in Texas, where in August we haven't really seen a day with a high below the triple digits in what seems like a month. I mean, today was one of those days and it was glorious. We had a high of 98. That's Fahrenheit for anyone overseas. So as the world literally roasts, this is the music for that. I mean, we're talking like Mad Max style stuff here. Psychic Ills was definitely in my Al Gore section when I organized my collection by fictitious and real characters based on what I thought those genres entailed. Al Gore being when the world burns and roasts and it becomes a post-apocalyptic desert. This is the album that launched Kevin Morby's solo career after a successful bout in the early work of the band Woods and his band with Cassie Ramone called The Babies. Definitively folk, but with traces of Americana and psychedelic rock, much like that of Woods. Morby leaves behind a lot of the lo-fi, gritty garage sound of The Babies. And then you get the whopping 9-minute title track, Harlem River, which remains among Morby's top streamed tracks on Spotify with over 33 million plays despite its substantial length. Good album, not my favorite by him, but a solid at number 8 nonetheless. We're just diving into the indie stuff here. Dark, noisy post-punk meets jangle pop in an kind of unexpected mashup with Crystal Stilt's third and so far final album, Nature Noir. I've always loved this album, and I find it the Stilts' most endearing and best work so far. I became obsessed with future folklore the moment I first heard it, and Nature Noir is packed with other great tracks, including Spirit in Front of Me, Sticks and Stones, and the title track, to name a few. For many people, Club 8 might be among the lesser-known bands on this list, at least here in the United States. Hailing from Sweden and made up of the duo Johan Angergo and Carolina Comstedt, this band features Johan, who is the head of Labrador Records. He is also in the band's Acid House Kings, Parlors, and his solo project, The Legends, which I haven't really covered here, but is a big favorite of mine as well. It starts out with the song Kill, 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 which is kind of reminiscent of Meat is Murder by the Smiths. And then you've got tracks like Stop Taking My Time, which is probably my all-time favorite track by Club 8. So good. You Could Be Anybody, I'm Not Gonna Grow Old, Straight as an Arrow. This album is phenomenal. It is so well done and so well put together. I just love it so much. Over their pretty much 30-year career, Club 8 has morphed a few different times, kind of like Johan Angergar's other bands. You've got the early work, which is definitively indie pop. Then you have kind of more of this mid-era, which kind of went into this more electronic pop and Euro dance style of music. And then, more recently, it's evolved even more into this more mellow electronic and synth-based pop type music. We are halfway through the list, jumping into number 5 on the top albums of 2013, 10 years later. Say what you will about Win Butler and the allegation of his alleged abuses that have surfaced over the past year, Arcade Fire sure knows how to craft an amazing album. Set aside one or two that just really weren't that great. I never really gave Reflektor the time it deserved back when it was originally released, and instead focused my listening on their first 2 albums, Funeral and Neon Bible, respectively. And even more recently, last year's We had dominated my playlist. But this album is truly, truly solid. Cohesively, it really is up there with all 3 of those releases, though it's probably number 4 on that list in terms of my favorites. This year, in 2023, Beach Fossils released their latest album, Bunny, and I have covered that already with a nice little album review. I'll have a link to that down in the description. But I'm going to talk about their 2013 album, Clash the Truth. I quite enjoyed Beach Fossils' 2010 self-titled debut and the subsequent 2011 EP, What a Pleasure. But I really fell in love with the band's music in 2013 upon the release of this album. The title track, Clash the Truth, is really my all-time favorite by the band. And that's really followed closely by Sleep Apnea, which can also be found on this album. Well, I did pick up an original on black vinyl back when it was released. This copy here is the 5th anniversary edition, and I usually wouldn't pick up what is technically a duplicate, even if it's pressed on a cool pink wax like this one is. But this version comes with a second LP containing 7 demos from Clash the Truth. So you get alternate versions, early renditions of 7 songs off the album. Now, both Clash the Truth and Sleep Apnea are included on that as demos, which I just couldn't resist it. Beach Fossil's latest album, like I said, Bunny, came out this year, and I picked it up about a week after I threw together my best albums of 2023 list so far. That was like the midpoint of the year list. I did give it a solid review, like I said, a few weeks later, so do check that out. And if you want to see where it comes come year end, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, as that's going to be coming in a few months. Speaking of artists I just covered, this album got a name drop in my recent review of Ty Segall's Live at Worship album that he did as a duo with Ty Segall himself and Emmett Kelly. In that, I noted that I really love it when artists step outside their norm and create something that's completely nonconformist insofar as the other work that they've produced is concerned. And that's exactly what you get here with Ty Segall's 2013 album, Sleeper. Almost entirely acoustic, this is the first album by Ty Segall that really sees him stepping away from the kind of noisy garage and indie rock sounds that he's known for. It's extremely introspective, it's contemplative, it's emotional. He digs really, really deep here, seeking meaning and clarity after the death of his father and estrangement from his mother that followed. He has woven depth and emotion into his music, both in the past and since Sleeper, but I don't think it has quite ever been this powerful. We're down to the last 2. You are just being a little brat today, aren't you? Say hi to Waffles here. He's so cute. Waffles, you need to leave Daddy alone while he records. I have long dubbed New Moon the best album by the noisy garage rock outfit, The Men. That holds true today, though their 2023 LP, New York City, does give it a bit of a run for its money. There are plenty of greats here, and where The Men shines most are when they inject slight hint of this kind of southern countryish twang to their solid, grimy Brooklyn style of garage rock. You've got Half Angel, Half Light. You've got Without a Face. You've got I Saw Her Face, another face-based track. 3 superb tracks with plenty of grit. I have loved this album and The Men since the moment I heard it, and for the longest time, I considered it my favorite album of 2013. But there's one more that tops them all. You may have guessed it, simply titled MBV and scripted all in lowercase. This was the influential shoegaze band's first new material in decades, and really the only they've released since. So My Bloody Valentine, MBV, they reunited and released this to great acclaim, giving us their second best material after the seminal Loveless. And it's followed that album with true perfection. Like Loveless, MBV is an essential record for fans of shoegaze or anyone curious about digging into that genre's history, or those at the forefront of the subgenre's creation and its resurgence. Creation, no pun intended. After this release, 2 other prominent shoegaze pioneers from the early 90s would both reunite and release new material as well. Both of those coming out 4 years later, 2017. I'm of course talking about Ride and Slow Dive. My Bloody Valentines tends to be the band that tops the list in terms of shoegaze impact and influence, and MBV gets well-warranted place atop my list as the #1 album of 2013. So there's my list. The top 10 albums released in 2013, now looking back at that year 10 years later in 2023. What's your number one album from that year and why? Let me know down in the comments. As always, I'd love to hear from you and what your list would include that's not featured on my list. I'm Andy, this is FensePost, and I'll see you next time.